share something about her mother from my side. Just to start off on a lighter note, what happened was Surekha had posted on a Facebook. She said like, my mother-in-law went to be with the Lord. Like, so there was a bit of confusion. Like people were not sure like whose mother had passed away like me. So you see, my mother is still alive. So now you know how much Surekha loves my mother. So, I, I was just joking about it. Like, it just like Surekha, what she did was she just copied the post that her sister-in-law put on her Facebook page. Like for her sister-in-law, it was her mother-in-law who passed away. So she just copied that and she posted it on our Facebook. My mother-in-law, like, she was a very loving person. Like, the reason why I say that is because, I could feel her love. She was the one person I always like, whenever I went to her, whenever I met her, like, I could feel her love. She was a genuine person. Like and the other thing that she never badmouthed anyone. She never talked ill of anyone. See, I noticed that difference because my my family side and all, like, they talk a lot about others, like what's going on with others. Usually, like, but whenever I came and met Surekha's mother, she never talked bad about anything. It was, talking to her and being with her, it made you feel good. Like, you never had any bitterness or any ill will towards anybody. So, uh, you know, that was one thing I will always remember about her. Was her genuine love for everyone. Like, the way she took care of the maid servants in the house. She treated them so well. Like most of them, they felt as if they were members of the house. And some of them, like, even when they moved, so they had stopped working for her because Surekha's parents moved often. But the maid servants, they would take time to just come and visit her, and because they still loved her like so much. And Surekha's mother, she worked for a school. Now this school was started started for orphans, like. So actually, it was called Victoria Memorial Homes because it is named after Queen Victoria. So what this home had was like, it was not only a school, it also had a hostel where the orphans could stay. And Surekha's mother taught science to high school. So, and this was a government-run school. So it was free for the children, like the government would. So, like in India, what happens is once something is free, like the government is running the whole thing. So even the poor people, like even if they're not orphans, they'll just send their children there so that because now they can stay there and they get free food and all. So what happened was a lot of these children, like they did not have any foundation. Like they were not children who had studied regularly, like right from had gone through schooling all their life. So some of the children, the older ones, like they did not have any basic foundation, but they were all in those higher classes, like in class like grade 10. They were all there. And they didn't have any basic foundation. But Surekha's mother, she had to come up with creative ways to teach them science. Because they didn't have, it wasn't like they knew already something, so you could build on that and start teaching them. So she had to come with creative ways to teach them science. And of course, Surekha's father was an engineer. So he used to help her too. Like they built a lot of these to build kits and all. Kits, I mean KITS, not kids. Like to show them experiments, to show the children, to teach them science. And Surekha's mother, she won the state award for best teacher. Like every year, all over the state, there are a few teachers are chosen. And one year she won the state award for the best teacher. So she was honored that way. That's I wanted to just remember her, like the love that she showed everyone. And these children, to some of these children, even after they left the school, they would come and visit her. They loved her so much. They had all, like, once they finished the school, most of them, they've either gone to higher studies or some of them went to jobs and all. But still, they would just come to the house, visit her. And she would treat them so well. Like, she never, so they would come. And some of them, like, you see, whenever it was Christmas and all, they would all come and help, like in putting up the tree, in decorating the house. That's because of the love that she showed her. She received back that love. These children, she received back that love. Yeah, and should I share the start sharing the this? I just want to share. What I was thinking, I was just thinking about the miracle of Jesus turning the water into wine. The word, like if you read, it says in the book of John, chapter 2, it says, on the third day, if you, let me just read. It says, on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. So this word says, on the third day. So I was thinking, like, this was the third day, it says. So what would have been the second day and what would have been the first day? So I was looking in the first chapter. In fact, this the chapters came much later. See, actually the book, I think originally the way the book was written, there were no chapters, no verses. It was just one continuous narration, the whole book of John. Afterwards, somebody just divided it into chapters and verses so that it will be easier for us to find the verses. So what happens is, like, if you just see it says the first one was the first day. It is, let me just read where it says. It just says, it looks, the first day was the day when Jesus was baptized. It says chapter 29. That's when the first, it says, though it says the next day, it says the next day he saw Jesus coming to him and said, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And that's where it says the first day was the first day that Jesus was baptized. And the next day was again in verse 35. It says, again the next day, John was standing with two of his disciples, and he looked at Jesus, and that's when the next day he called his disciples. The next day. And again it says the next day. So that would be the third day. When he says, again this says the next day, that would be in verse 43. John chapter 1 and verse 43. It says, the next day, that's when he decided, it says he purposed to go into Galilee. So that was the third day. And he says, again, he selected some more disciples. That some more disciples followed him. So, but that was the day, it says he decided to go into Galilee. Now, earlier, if you read the book of Matthew and all, like it says, like after he was tempted, after he was tempted, he went to Capernaum. Like Capernaum is by the Sea of Galilee. The town is by the Sea of Galilee. So from there, he had decided to, I think he had decided, he says, go to the sea, to Galilee, which means that I think he had decided to go to Cana in Galilee. Because it's this Cana is not exactly on the coast, but it's a little away from the coast. So then now if you see that now the third day, it says there was a wedding in Cana, and the mother of Jesus was there. It looks like, I was thinking, like, if you go by culture, like the Middle Eastern culture is very similar to our South Asian culture. You can say that the way I think, in fact, what they say is like people in like in Asia, in South Asia and all, they had one time, some thousands of years back, they had all come from Central Asia. So you can say that culture was the same. It's almost the same. So you say, and I think Mary must have been a very important person in that marriage. It must have been somebody who was very close to Mary in that marriage. Somebody was very close to Mary. So what usually will happen in culture, Middle Eastern culture, is it's not like like what we see here in the West, where they try to restrict people, like how many people we want to see. The culture there is like, you invite as many people as you want. Like usually, if usually the way that it used to happen, I remember when I was a kid, like you tell your relatives, close relatives, you invite your friends, bring your friends to the marriage, invite your friends to the marriage. Because now I'm seeing this, I'm sure that Jesus had picked his disciples, and I'm sure these people where the marriage was, they wouldn't have known Jesus' disciples. Maybe they knew Mary, and because Jesus was the son of Mary, they would have known him. But going by that culture, they would have said, right, okay, so Jesus and his disciples came to the wedding. And the word says that, so usually what happens is like, and when I was reading about this, it says like the wine ran out. And was going by, when I was a kid, any marriage I attended, most of the time the food used to run out. Okay, so what will happen is, like, usually when the food runs out, the main people, like the parents of the bridegroom and all, they start to panic and saying that, oh, the food has run out, what should we do? And usually some very close relatives, because everyone wants to help them, they are the ones who try to arrange something. They will try to arrange something. Like usually I know, like lots of times what will happen is, in these cultures, they make biryani. So there will be some smart person who will suggest, let's cook some white rice, add it to the biryani, see, just make the quantity. So I'm sure, like, what somebody would have at that time would have said, let's add some water to the wine and but it says the wine ran out. It was not like there was some wine left where they could just add water and give it to the people around. So the wine ran out. And so I'm thinking, because Mary was an important person, she went to Jesus to tell him, like, see, the wine has run out. But for Jesus, he had a greater purpose, like, he had a mission, like he was there. So when she ran out, and usually what happens, like, in this cultures, like back home, a lot of people will also remember, like the servants, they will always listen. They will know who the master of the house is. Okay, so they will listen to only what the master says. And usually, like, because in the house, even if the children in that house tell the servants something, they'll do, because they know, okay, they are belong to the house. But lots of times what happens is, when our close relatives are come to our house, when our close relatives and all come to house, my parents and all will tell the servants, whatever they tell you, you do it, because they are close. Now the servants know that, like, whatever this person tells, I have to do it, because they're very. So something like that. See, Mary had to tell the servants there, do what Jesus says. I think the reason was, afterwards, if you go this one, it says it was the first sign that Jesus did, which means no one knew till then that Jesus was somebody who could perform miracles. Because if he had performed a miracle, this would not have been the first miracle. So I'm just thinking that even Mary had not seen any miracle. I think it never, I'm just saying, it never happened that Mary was sick and Jesus went and healed her, because that would have been the first miracle. Or if something ran out of the house, I was thinking, like, okay, if oil had ran out of the house and Jesus had gone and told, Mary had gone and told Jesus, oh, we have run out of oil. And Jesus said, oh, just fill it with water. Just fill the thing with water and then start cooking. If that happened, that would have been the first miracle. But the word says that this is, so no one knew there, like the people had come to the wedding, or even the disciples knew about that Jesus was a person who could do miracles. Nobody knew that. But if you look at it, the only person there in that wedding who had received a miracle or who knew about Jesus was Mary, because he was conceived of the Holy Ghost. And the word at the time of when she conceived it, she said, I am a virgin. Like, how can this be? She was expecting, but she said, like, no, it will be by the Holy Ghost. You will bear a child and he will be the Son of God. So Mary was the only one in that whole thing, in that whole span, who knew that Jesus he could do miracles. Because she had received a miracle, she was expecting a miracle from Jesus. And it says that that there in that wedding, there were 6 jars. And those jars were kept for ceremonial purification. So the Jews, like, so they would, those were waters for them. So I think they were kept there so that all the guests who came to the wedding, they would wash their hands. They could. So usually the Jews, before they started eating, they would wash their hands. That's the reason why when the disciples at one time, when they started eating the corn, like they picked up from the field, they just picked up the corn and they started eating. The Pharisees and all said, like, why is it that your disciples are eating without washing their hands? So those 6 jars were kept there for washing their hands, for purification, like they had washed their hands. And it looks like they all washed their hands, I think, because when Jesus told the servants, you fill the jars with water, the word says, I think the Holy Spirit, there was some reason why the Holy Spirit recorded all these things. Like, it says they filled it up to the brim, which means either they were empty or almost empty, those jars. Like, the servants filled the water up to the brim. They filled the waters, right? They filled up those jars. And it says, like, those jars, each of the jars, they could hold up to 20 to 30 gallons. So each each gallon, if you see that, or what they say is, like, they would have, like, it says 2 to 2 to 3 firkins. So you can say like each firkin is about 40 liters of 40 liters. So you can say if we can say that each jar would almost like 100 liters on average. Each, so all the one was 600 liters of water. Those jars were holding. So when Mary told the servants, do what Jesus says, I think the first command he gave them would not have been difficult, because all he said was they were water jars, and he asked them to fill them with water. So they would have just filled them up, water. But I think the second thing that Jesus told them is that draw the water and take it to the master of the banquet. Now that would have been a difficult thing to carry. You just can't, like in a wedding, you just can't take water, because they don't know, like, how will they know that this is, they put water, they know that they filled it with the water, and now they have to carry that water to the master of the banquet and say, taste this thing. Like, what if it was just water? He would just shout at them saying that, what is that you brought me water? But they obeyed that command. They took that thing out and took it to the master of the banquet, who tasted, and he found that he said, this wine is better than what you served before. So in a way, I think this was the way Jesus was showing, like, what the Jews believed was that water, it says it was ceremonial purification. They thought like that we can wash that water, we can wash our hands, we can clean ourselves, we can be clean. It's like saying that they all believe that they could do some things. Like what the law said, they could, okay, we can take some burnt sacrifices, we can do whatever the law said, or whatever said, we can do some good things, and then we can be pure. But what Jesus meant was like, that is not what will make you pure. He said like, it is that wine, that is my blood. That is what is going to make you pure. So that's later on, that's why he said, like, you have to drink my blood. It's not just you wash here, it's water or your good works. That will not make you righteous. It's my wine. So if you see the miracles that Jesus did, there are 2 miracles that Jesus did where everyone present there received or was blessed. Look, all other miracles, if we see, like, when the lame paralytic man was let down from the roof, it was the paralytic man who got healed. Or else, like when there is 10 lepers who came, it was the 10 lepers who got healed. But if you look at this miracle, the turning of water into wine, everyone there, because I'm thinking 600 liters of wine it's a lot of wine. So everyone there, they had this wine to drink. And there's the other miracle where it says, like, it was that feeding of 5,000 of the bread. When Jesus distributed the bread, it says everyone there received bread. Because the word says after it was done, after that was over, it says they collected 12 baskets of leftover, which meant that everyone there had enough. So what is meant? I'm sure there could have been some people who didn't want it. Maybe they didn't want the wine, or they didn't want the bread, to eat the bread, but that was their choice. It was not because there was no wine, there's not enough wine, or there was not enough bread. So the wine and the bread was there for everyone. And it was the people's choice, whether you want to take part in that wine and you want to take part in that bread. So that's these I was thinking about this and I said, yeah, these are the two miracles. Like when everyone who was present there received it. And we now know that. You see, like when Jesus said, this is my body that is broken for you. And this is my blood. When he at the time of the Last Supper, when he gave the wine and the bread, he just said, this is my body that is broken for you. And this wine represents my blood. It means it's for everyone. This blood was shed for the whole mankind. And it's an individual choice whether he wants to have it or not. But Jesus has shed that his blood was crucified for everyone. And also, obviously, we are going through this crisis. I shared this in the church before too. See what happens when you go through a crisis. Like what will be our experience when we go through a crisis? After the miracle of feeding the 5,000, after the miracle of feeding 5,000, see, people were so impressed with that miracle because this was something they could relate to, like getting food, just getting food, like 5 loaves and 2 fishes being multiplied to everyone. This is what was their idea of a Messiah, that a Messiah would be someone who would do this kind of miracles. So Jesus knew that they were thinking of making Jesus the king. So this says he withdrew to a mountain by himself. And then he asked his disciples to get into a boat. And the disciples were going back to Capernaum. They were rowing back to Capernaum. And I'm thinking that they would have come from Capernaum in that boat, because you just don't take a boat which doesn't belong to you and go back. So I'm thinking they came by boat from Capernaum to where the miracle took place, because the word says he had to constrain them. He had to make them leave without me, because they would have said, like, we all came together and you're asking us to leave by that boat. Like, how are you going to come back? But they said they all got into that boat. All the disciples got into that boat. So the people there, they saw that Jesus did not get into the boat. It was only the disciples who got into the boat. And when they're rowing back, when the disciples were rowing back, it says almost as they rowed about 3 to 4 miles, which is about like close to like 6 kilometers or so, 5 to 6 kilometers, when this storm came. And this was a big storm. And in fact, when they started itself, the wind had started to blow. And at that time, Jesus came in that storm. He had come. And at beginning, they were afraid. But he says when they saw it was Jesus and they're willing to take him into the boat, it says immediately after taking him into the boat was where it was supposed to be. It had reached Capernaum. So I was just thinking, like, if you look at this one, the people who, you see, the Sea of Galilee, it's quite a big lake, because if they rowed almost like 6 kilometers and still they're not reached the other side, see, it's a big lake. So the people, where they got into the boat was Tiberias. That's the place where they got into the boat, Tiberias, and they had gone to Capernaum. So the people in Tiberias, and they saw that was the only boat there at that time that left. So I'm just thinking, like, after the storm was over, like everything was over, when the people came and they saw this boat has already reached the other side, they would have thought, like, okay, there was a storm. The disciples, somehow they managed to reach the other side without Jesus. They managed to reach the other side without Jesus. And on the other side, in Capernaum, when this boat came, they saw Jesus and the disciples getting down. The people there would have thought, like, yeah, maybe Jesus, they all got together into that boat And because Jesus was in the boat, they all came through the storm. But actually, it was only the disciples, they are the one who experienced that. They know that, you see, when they were in danger and when they were afraid and when they called out, that's when Jesus came. And he guided them, he made them to reach the shore. So I'm thinking, even with this COVID thing, it'll be over sometime. It'll be over, and then people will be saying that, yeah, this virus, it came, people fought about it, then somehow it went off, it went away. But there will be people on the other side who's saying, they don't mean anything. Oh yeah, God brought us through. God, it was because of Jesus we are all through like this. No, but actually it's the people who cry out and who experience, through this storm, that Jesus was with them. It is that experience. It's only those who can cry out, and they know that it was Jesus who had brought us our. So we know that, we have been crying out for so long, and we know that Jesus is with us. He's the one who's leading us, who's bringing us out of this crisis. I just want to tell you about a real story. I read it long back, but somehow, I got reminded about this story. And I want to tell you about this story. See, this, some of you may know, there's a American actor called Martin Sheen. Some of these younger kids, they may know his son, Charlie Sheen. He acted in that serial, Two Men and a Boy. 2.5 Men? Because I saw. Okay. What's that? Okay, so you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so this Martin Sheen, he played the role of a journalist in the movie Gandhi. So there was a journalist who was very impressed with Gandhi. I think he was an American journalist called C.F. Andrews or some. So he played that role in that movie Gandhi. So he came to India for the shooting, but he had come to India for the shooting. So it says one day they were shooting on location, and after the shooting was over, he was walking back to his car when he said one little boy came and started to beg for money. That's very common in India. So what happened was Martin Sheen did not pay any attention to that boy. He started walking back to his car, and he got in his car. But you see, he says that little boy just kept following him. He came right up to that car, just to see. He was still begging for money. So Martin Sheen told the driver to start the car, and he thought, once the car starts and it picks up speed, this boy will naturally stay back. But he says after the car started traveling, he looked back and he saw the boy was running after the car. And he says the boy did not, he just kept running after the car. And Martin Sheen says that he went up to his hotel, and this boy ran right behind the car, right up to the hotel, his hotel. And as Martin Sheen got down and he went into the hotel. You see, if he's an actor, usually, they all stay in luxury hotels. So they wouldn't know these, they would never allow a boy, like a little boy, like the shabbily dressed boy, into the hotel. So he says he went into his room in the hotel, and he said he just could not shake that boy off his mind. That this boy ran after the car, all the way from there, he just ran after the car. And he felt compassion for that boy. He said he felt very compassion for that boy, and he kept thinking about it. And then afterwards, what he did was, he said he picked up the phone, he called his wife, and he told her about this incident. He said how the boy ran after the car. And he said, I feel that we should adopt this boy. His wife heard the story and she said, okay. So they both decided to adopt the boy. So he says the next day, the shooting was at the same location. And Martin Sheen said he went to that location, but that boy did not turn up. He said the whole day he looked for that. He had people look around, but he says that boy did not turn up. See, this story, like, always I remember somehow this story has been in my mind, saying that what was that boy's mistake, or what did that boy do? He did. You see, he gave up too soon. He did not persevere. He ran. He says, like, nobody does that. To run after a car is not easy. But this boy ran after that car, like. But only if he had turned up the next day. Usually what happens is beggars in India, like when they're begging, they use that term called saab. They said saab means sir, like that's how they beg, said sir. And usually they don't ask for paper currency, they ask for coins. They'll ask, like, sir, if you can spare some change, just give it to me. That's what they were saying. And this boy would have, if he was there, he would have started the same way, saying, sir. But Martin Sheen wanted to tell him, don't call me sir, call me daddy. And don't ask for change. Whatever I have, it will be yours. Because we know, like in West, if you adopt somebody, they get the same share as the natural born children. But that boy was not there. He missed it. So that's the reason why Jesus even said that people, he asked us to persevere in prayer. So we in this crisis, there's so much prayer going on. I don't know if you're, like, a lot of people now saying, what's the use of praying? What's the use? We have been praying so much, so many people all around are praying. But the thing is, like, I was thinking, when that boy first came to Martin Sheen, like, and he started to beg, and let's say Martin Sheen had given him some money. Because he was a foreigner, like, instead of giving him some change, some coins, maybe he could have given him some rupees, like. And the boy would have been so happy. That's what he would have got. But because he persevered, he would have he got so much more. He got adoption, like Martin Sheen was ready to adopt him. Like, that's because he persevered. So even when we are praying, we just don't know, God has some greater purpose. See, he has such a, the word says, like, much more than what we can imagine or think. That's what he has kept for us. So let's not lose heart. Let's not become weary, and let's keep up. Like, let's persevere. Let's press on. People there, I've seen that there are people who are making fun too. When the lockdown was announced in US, as they said, there's going to be a lockdown, like the government declared the lockdown. You see, like, what they say was gun stores were just crowded. People just went to the gun stores to buy guns. And there was this one British comedian, like, he made fun. He made fun of it this way. He said, when the people of America found that they could not pray this virus away, they went and started buying guns to shoot the virus. People criticized him for his insensitive remarks, but you just see that people think that, okay, we are not praying just like that. We are praying because we know that God is all powerful. He's the one. So I want to encourage, let's all persevere, let's all press on.
What's the time?